For every Tinkerbell, there's a Lennon sheath, and for every tooth fairy, there's a Slua lurking in the shadows. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pantheon Mythology, where today we're diving into the question, why are fairies so sinister? If you too want to be sinister, check out Pantheon Apparel, our clothing brand inspired by myths from around the world. We ship worldwide and are rated excellent on Trustpilot. Link in the description. Right, here we go. Sinister. Not a word many would associate with fairies. Thanks to the likes of Disney, they've been portrayed as pixie dust sprinkling, innocent, whimsical creatures, symbols of light-hearted magic and childhood wonder. However, if we dig a little deeper into the roots of folklore, we find a far darker truth. One not exclusive to charming figures or delicate wings. In traditional lore, fairies were complex, often terrifying entities whose interactions with humans could be anything but harmless. They weren't just playful tricksters, they were beings of immense, unpredictable power, with a code of ethics and motives completely alien to human understanding. Stories tell of fairies who stole children, cursed the unwary, led travelers into danger, and exacted harsh retribution for the slightest offense. The world of fairies was a realm of mystery and menace, where any encounter could spell doom for those who didn't approach with caution and respect. The concept of fairies has deep roots in European folklore, with origins tracing back to ancient mythologies and cultural beliefs. The term fairy is derived from the Latin word fatum, meaning fate or destiny, which evolved into the Old French fairy, referring to enchantment and magic. In various cultures, fairies were often considered nature spirits or deities linked to natural elements like trees, rivers, and mountains. Over time, these beings were integrated into local folklore, evolving into the fairies we recognize today. Their characteristics varied across regions, but they were commonly envisioned as small, human-like creatures with magical abilities, often inhabiting a realm parallel to the human world. One of the most chilling beliefs was that fairies would abduct humans, especially infants, and replace them with changelings. These changelings were fairy offspring, left behind to mimic the appearance of a human child, yet they were rarely a perfect substitute. Parents who suspected a changeling in their home would often notice odd traits or behaviors. The child might appear sickly, cry excessively, or exhibit unsettling intelligence beyond its years. Folklore warned that these traits were signs of a fairy child masquerading in place of the real human baby. The reasons behind these fairy abductions varied across regions. In Irish and Scottish lore, it was believed that fairies took healthy human children to enhance their own kin or as retribution for perceived slights by humans. In some versions, fairies were thought to desire the beauty and vitality of human infants to refresh their own lineage. Other tales suggest that fairies saw human children as prized possessions, viewing them as a source of youth or unique energy that fairy children lacked. For families, the presence of a changeling was deeply unsettling. To have one's child stolen and replaced with a creature from another realm represented a violation of both family and humanity. Desperate to reclaim their child, parents would turn to various protective rituals or remedies, often cruel and dangerous, believing these could drive the changeling away and force the fairies to return the stolen infant. This fear surrounding changelings reveals a darker, capricious side of fairies, a side that saw them not as playful beings, but as entities capable of heart-wrenching deception and harm, and we're only just getting started. Fairies were not only known for abducting humans, they also held a notorious reputation for their curses and spite. To offend a fairy, even in the smallest way, could bring down a tide of misfortune. If a person was disrespectful, trespassed on sacred fairy grounds, or simply forgot to leave an offering, the consequences could be devastating. Those cursed by fairies faced unrelenting misfortune, illnesses that couldn't be cured, accidents that seemed anything but random, and a sense of inescapable bad luck that followed them everywhere. Irish folklore, in particular, warns against disturbing any fairy pots or fairy trees, places thought to be gateways to the fairy realm. Stories tell of people who dared to cut down these trees or build over ancient fairy paths only to be met with a string of calamities. Entire families or even villages could fall under a curse for one person's misstep. Such curses weren't always direct. They often manifested as a series as subtle but life-altering events, from livestock falling ill to financial ruin. Desperate to rid themselves of these curses, people would often seek out fairy doctors or folk healers believed to have knowledge of the fairy world. These healers would perform rituals or offer tokens to appease the fairies, hoping to lift the affliction. Yet even these curses were never guaranteed. Once offended, a fairy's spite could linger for generations, cementing their image as beings who were as dangerous as they were mysterious. For those who believed, maintaining a respectful distance from the fairy realm was essential. The price of offending them was simply too high. Beyond their capacity for abduction and curses, fairies were also notorious for leading travellers astray. In English regions like Devon and Cornwall, tales tell of pixies, mischievous fairies, delighting in confusing wayfarers, a practice known as being pixie-led. These beings would create illusions or sounds to divert individuals from their paths, often leading them into treacherous terrains such as bogs or dense forests. Similarly, in Welsh folklore, the Gweision were malevolent spirits believed to haunt mountainous regions, intentionally misguiding travellers into perilous situations. These entities would appear as ordinary humans or animals, only to vanish suddenly, leaving the traveller disorientated and lost. In Ireland, the concept of stray sword was prevalent, a patch of grass enchanted by fairies. Stepping on it could cause a person to become hopelessly lost, even in familiar surroundings, as the landscape would seem to change around them. Adding to their sinister acts, fairies were also blamed for agricultural misfortunes, particularly the blighting of crops and the affliction of livestock. In many regions, it was believed that upsetting the fairies by neglecting offerings, trespassing on their sacred spaces, or failing to observe customary rituals could lead to their vengeance striking at the heart of a person's livelihood. In Scottish folklore, the Nuckallavee, a monstrous sea fairy, was said to be responsible for droughts and livestock epidemics. Its very breath was believed to wither crops and spread diseases among animals, leading to famine and hardship for entire communities. Meanwhile, in Cornwall, the Spriggans, known as vicious guardians of treasures and ancient sites, were believed to target farms, causing livestock to sicken and crops to fail if their domains were disturbed. To protect their farms, people would practice appeasement rituals such as leaving offerings of food or drink, avoiding areas believed to be inhabited by fairies, and observing certain times of year, like Beltane, to seek the fairies' goodwill. The success of a harvest or the health of livestock often depended on maintaining respect towards these otherworldly beings. The Unseelie Court is the pinnacle of evil fairies, a dark collective of fey beings known for their hostility and malice towards humans. Unlike Seelie Court, whose fairies might occasionally offer kindness or blessings, the Unseelie Court embodies the terrifying and chaotic side of the fairy realm. Its members are known to seek out opportunities to harm, mislead, or torment those who cross their path, often with no provocation needed. The court includes creatures such as the redcaps, vicious goblin-like fairies who inhabit old ruins and abandoned castles, known for soaking their caps in the blood of their victims. Redcaps are relentless and violent, attacking anyone who dares enter their territory. Another fearsome member is the Nuckallavee, a horrifying sea fae from Orkney folklore. With its skeletal horse-like body and human-like torso, the Nuckallavee was said to bring disease and blight entire villages, killing livestock and causing crops to fail with its deadly breath. Then there's the Slua, also known as the host of the unforgiven dead. The Slua are a spectral group of fey spirits who fly through the night, particularly during Samhain, seeking souls to carry off. It's said they target those who are dying, and hearing their approach was believed to be a sign of impending death. They serve as a grim reminder that not all fairies are bound to nature, some are harbingers of death itself. The Farcan, a grotesque and one-eyed fey being, adds a monstrous presence to the Unseelie ranks. Known for its extreme hatred of humans, the Farcan was said to have the power to kill or cripple with its gaze. Legends describe it lurking in remote places, waiting to ambush unwary travellers, showing that some Unseelie fairies were just as dangerous as any predatory animal. Adding a more seductive yet deadly touch is Bavanshi, often described as a vampiric fairy. Appearing as a beautiful woman, the Bavanshi would lure young men to dance with her in the forest only to drain their blood when they were completely entranced. Then there's a Puka, a mischievous shapeshifter known to take the form of various animals such as horses, goats, or even humans. Although not always deadly, the Puka could lead travelers astray, playing terrifying tricks and causing general chaos, especially during the dark months when its power was strongest. The Unseelie Court also includes more elusive creatures, like the Gunkanar, a seductive fairy whose touch was believed to be fatal. Often appearing as a charming man, the Gunkanar would enchant its victims with his allure, leaving them hopelessly infatuated before abandoning them to pine away in despair. Together, these fairies and their unpredictable natures made the Unseelie Court a feared presence in folklore. The Fae beings weren't just mischievous or curious. They were dangerous, embodying both terror and tragedy, and their presence in stories served as a stark warning. To encounter the Unseelie Court was to face forces beyond human comprehension, where each interaction could spell disaster and where the beauty of the fairy world masked as a deeply sinister reality. If that isn't enough, fairy rings, those innocent-looking circles of mushrooms you might spot on a morning walk, are believed to be another one of the traps. Known as fairy rings, elf circles, or pixie rings, these naturally occurring mushroom circles have long held a fearsome reputation in folklore. Though they may seem harmless, stepping inside one was said to risk being whisked away to the fairy realm itself. In many traditions, fairy rings were thought to be places where fairies danced in the night, and any human who dared to enter could disrupt their revelry with dangerous consequences. Legends warned that stepping into a fairy ring could trap a person into a perpetual dance, joining the fairies in a whirl until they collapsed from exhaustion. Even if the person managed to escape, they might only return to find that time had warped. Hours inside the ring could translate to years in the human world. Welsh folklore, for example, suggested that a person trapped in a fairy ring might return as if no time had passed at all, only to find their loved ones had aged or even gone. French tales of similar warnings, with people who entered a ring often cursed with bad luck, illness, or a life shortened by fairy enchantments. In some Irish tales, those unfortunate enough to stumble into a ring were said to emerge touched, forever altered by their encounter. To avoid these fates, people were advised to steer clear of fairy rings, particularly at dawn and dusk when fairies were believed to be most active. Superstition suggested that if anyone did accidentally step into one, they should try and run in the direction of the sun or place an iron object on the ground to break the fairy enchantment, or do what I do and just avoid mushrooms altogether. Gifts are usually a nice thing. However, a gift from a fairy, well, maybe not so much. In folklore, fairies are notorious for offering gifts or making deals that seem beneficial at first, but often lead to unforeseen and tragic consequences. These deceptive practices reinforce their reputation as cunning tricksters, turning what might appear to be a generous act into a calculated trap. One common motif involves fairies bestowing gifts that initially appear to bring good fortune, but carry hidden conditions. For example, in some tales, a fairy might offer a human purse that never empties, promising endless wealth. However, recipients often find that the purse brings nothing but misery, attracting thieves, causing family discord, or leading to personal ruin. The gift's allure binds them to the underlying curse, pulling them into a spiral of misfortune. Another theme in fairy lore is the offer of help in exchange for what seems like a trivial promise. A fairy might assist a struggling farmer with a bountiful harvest, or lend a craftsman an extraordinary skill. But when it's time to fulfill their end of the bargain, humans often find the true cost is far from trivial. It might mean the firstborn child, a lifetime of servitude, or even one's soul. The seemingly innocent deal turns into a bond from which escape is impossible. These tales serve as cautionary lessons, warning people never to accept gifts or make deals with fairies without truly understanding the terms. The underlying message is clear. What appears to be a blessing from the fairies can quickly transform into a curse. In folklore, certain fairies weren't merely mischievous but were seen as harbingers of death. casting a shadow wherever they appeared. A prime example is the banshee from Irish legend. Yes, she's classed as a fairy, whose piercing wail was believed to signal the impending death of a family member. Often described as a ghostly woman, or even a figure dressed in mourning attire, the banshee was sometimes seen combing her hair, weeping, or wandering near homes at night. Her appearance was not always intended to harm, but the foreboding knowledge she imparted became a chilling reminder of the fairy world's power over human fate. Beyond the banshee, other fairies exhibited equally unsettling behaviours, acting with a morality alien to human understanding. Fairies often didn't adhere to human concepts of good or evil, rather they operated within a code of their own, one that could be both incomprehensible and arbitrary. For instance, fairies might bless one person with good fortune for simply passing through their land respectfully, while cursing another for a perceived slight. A humble gesture or simple gift might please them, while an innocent oversight could lead to misfortune. This moral ambiguity meant that fairies could act as protectors yet quickly turn vengeful or capricious, leaving humans in a state of anxiety about their unpredictable natures. In tales from across Europe, the rules of fairy behaviour appeared erratic. What was acceptable one day could invite punishment the next, underscoring the notion that fairies existed outside the bounds of human justice. This mysterious, shifting moral framework added to the fear surrounding them, as people realised they could neither control nor fully comprehend the fairies' sense of right or wrong. Despite the myriad of dangers posed by fairies, there are countermeasures to guard against their mischief. One of the most widely held beliefs is that iron has the power to repel or harm fairies, acting as a safeguard for those who might encounter them. In many cultures, iron is seen as a potent deterrent against supernatural forces, including fairies. Hanging iron horseshoes above doorways became a common practice, believed to ward off malevolent spirits. People would also carry small iron objects like nails or knives to protect themselves from fairy enchantments, using these tools as shields against fairy trickery. The aversion of fairies to iron may be linked to the rise of human civilization and ironworking, which symbolized human encroachment into the natural world, the fairies' traditional domain. As iron tools and weapons became more widespread, fairies, as guardians of nature, were thought to shun this powerful metal, which had the ability to reshape their landscapes. So why are fairies so sinister then? Traditional tales depict them as unpredictable and often malevolent beings. They were believed to abduct humans, especially infants, replacing them with changelings, curse those who offended them, leading to misfortune or illness, lead travellers astray into treacherous landscapes, blight crops and livestock, causing devastating loss, and offer gifts or make deals with hidden, often tragic consequences. Their actions reflected a morality entirely alien to human understanding, further contributing to their fearsome reputation. In contrast, modern portrayals have transformed fairies into charming, harmless creatures. Today, popular culture depicts them as benevolent, winged beings associated with nature and magic, symbols of innocence and whimsy. This shift from dark origins to friendly figures reveals the evolution of fairy imagery, as we've reshaped them into something enchanting and safe. Yet, whether viewed as protectors or threats, fairies continue to captivate us. Beneath their wings and sparkle lies an ancient power, reminding us that even in their gentlest forms, fairies are not to be taken lightly.